Why is he even here? A single dad at a wedding without a plus one? That's just sad. Marcus Chen heard every word. He'd spent 6 years making himself invisible, arriving late, leaving early, sitting in corners where no one would notice him. But tonight, at his cousin's wedding, surrounded by 200 guests in designer suits and elegant dresses, he couldn't disappear fast enough. Then she stood up. The woman from apartment 4B, the neighbor he'd barely spoken to in 3 years. She walked to the microphone. And what she said next changed everything. If you want to know what happened, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The invitation had arrived 6 weeks ago, tucked between an electric bill and a grocery store flyer. Marcus Chen had stared at the elegant cream envelope for a full minute before opening it, already knowing what was inside and already dreading what it would ask of him. Mr. Marcus Chen and guest. Request the honor of your presence at the wedding of Jennifer Chen and David Morrison. The words "and guest" had felt like a small cruelty, though he knew his cousin Jennifer hadn't meant it that way. She was simply following tradition, leaving space for a plus one that didn't exist, had never existed, and probably never would. He'd almost thrown the invitation away, almost written a polite excuse about work conflicts or his daughter's school schedule, almost done what he'd been doing for 6 years, found a reason to stay invisible. But his daughter Lily had found the invitation on the kitchen counter. "Dad, Cousin Jenny's getting married? Are we going?" She was 11 years old, with her mother's dark eyes and his own stubborn chin, and she'd looked at him with such excitement that he couldn't bring himself to disappoint her. "You have that school trip the same weekend, remember? The one to the Science Museum in Boston?" Lily's face had fallen, then brightened again. "But you can still go. You should go, Dad. You never go anywhere." She wasn't wrong. The last social event Marcus had attended was a parent-teacher conference, and even that had felt like walking into enemy territory. The other parents had arrived in pairs, discussed vacation plans and couple activities, while Marcus had stood alone by the refreshment table, nodding politely and counting the minutes until he could leave. "I'll think about it," he'd told Lily. And he had thought about it. For 6 weeks, he'd thought about nothing else. The invitation sat on his dresser like an accusation, reminding him of everything he'd become and everything he'd stopped being. Before Sarah's death, Marcus had been different. Not confident exactly, but present. He'd gone to parties, made jokes, danced badly but enthusiastically at weddings, while his wife laughed and pulled him closer. He'd been someone who showed up, who participated, who believed he belonged in rooms full of people. But 6 years of solo parenting had worn those edges smooth. He'd learned to make himself small, to slip in and out of spaces without disrupting the careful choreography of other people's lives. He'd become an expert at the Irish goodbye, the early departure, the excuse that no one questioned because no one noticed him leaving. Tonight, though, there was no early escape. The wedding was at the Morrison estate, 45 minutes outside the city, and Marcus had committed to attending when he'd RSVP'd 3 weeks ago. Jennifer had called him personally to thank him for coming, her voice warm with genuine pleasure. "I'm so glad you'll be there, Marcus. I feel like I never see you anymore." He'd mumbled something about work being busy, about Lily taking up most of his time. He hadn't told her the truth, that he avoided family gatherings because they reminded him of everything he'd lost, everything he was failing to rebuild. Now, sitting in his car in the Morrison estate parking lot, Marcus watched guests stream toward the illuminated garden where the ceremony would take place. They moved in pairs mostly, women in flowing dresses, men in suits that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. Laughter floated through the evening air, the easy laughter of people who belong to each other and to this world. Marcus checked his watch. 6:47. The ceremony was at 7:00. If he went in now, he could find a seat in the back, clap at the appropriate moments, and slip out during the first dance. He'd already mapped the exits, calculated the timing, planned his escape route. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily, sent from her school trip. "Have fun tonight, Dad. Take pictures." Marcus smiled despite himself. His daughter had inherited her mother's optimism, her belief that every event held the potential for joy. She still thought weddings were romantic, that parties were exciting, that her father just needed a little push to rediscover the life he'd lost. He tucked the phone into his jacket pocket and stepped out of the car. The Morrison estate was spectacular in that old money way that made Marcus acutely aware of his department store suit and Target dress shoes. White lights hung from ancient oak trees, casting everything in a soft, golden glow. A string quartet played something classical and vaguely familiar as guests found their seats in rows of white chairs facing an arch covered in white roses. Marcus moved through the crowd like a ghost, keeping his head down and his shoulders slightly hunched. It was a posture he'd perfected over years of practice, the body language of someone who didn't want to be noticed, didn't expect to be included, didn't need anything from anyone. He found a seat in the last row, far from the center aisle and partially hidden by a large floral arrangement. From here, he could see without being seen, observe without participating. It was exactly where he wanted to be. The guests around him settled into their seats, still chatting in that easy, familiar way of people who saw each other regularly. Marcus caught fragments of conversation, vacation plans, children's achievements, promotions, and real estate purchases. The currency of successful, connected lives. A woman sat down 2 seats away from him. Marcus glanced over, then looked again. He recognized her. Apartment 4B, the woman who lived 1 floor below him in his building. She had shoulder-length dark hair, a simple blue dress, and the same slightly hunched posture that Marcus had adopted. She was staring at her phone, scrolling through something with a concentration that seemed designed to avoid eye contact with anyone around her. Marcus knew her name was Elena Reyes. He knew she worked from home, something with computers, because he sometimes heard her on conference calls when he passed her door. He knew she lived alone, ordered takeout most nights, and walked her small dog at exactly 6:30 every morning and 9 o'clock every evening. He knew all of this because he noticed details about people who seemed as alone as he was. They'd never really spoken. Nods in the hallway, mumbled greetings at the mailboxes, the occasional held door, the polite non-relationship of urban neighbors who shared walls but nothing else. Elena looked up from her phone and caught him staring. Marcus quickly looked away, his face warming with embarrassment. But in that brief moment of eye contact, he'd seen something familiar in her expression, the wary exhaustion of someone bracing for social interaction they didn't want. The string quartet shifted to a new piece, signaling the ceremony's imminent start. Marcus settled deeper into his chair, prepared to endure. The wedding was beautiful in all the expected ways. Jennifer was radiant. David was handsome. Their vows were heartfelt and occasionally funny. The guests laughed in all the right places, dabbed their eyes at the emotional peaks, applauded when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Marcus clapped along with everyone else, feeling nothing but relief that the first phase was over. Now came the reception, the mingling, the questions he dreaded. "Where's your wife tonight? Still single? A catch like you? Have you thought about getting back out there?" The questions always came, no matter how hard he tried to avoid them. People meant well, he knew. They couldn't understand why a reasonably attractive, gainfully employed man in his late 30s would choose solitude over companionship. They didn't know about Sarah, about the car accident that had stolen her 3 months into her pregnancy with their second child, about the grief that had calcified into something Marcus no longer knew how to name. He didn't talk about it, ever. Some losses were too deep for casual conversation. The reception was held in a nearby pavilion, all draped fabric and soft lighting and tables arranged around a central dance floor. Marcus entered through a side door, hoping to find his assigned seat without having to navigate the gauntlet of cocktail hour small talk. Table 18. He found it near the back of the room, partially obscured by a potted fern. Perfect. He was examining the place cards when a voice behind him said, "You're 4C, right?" Marcus turned. Elena Reyes stood a few feet away, holding a glass of wine and looking almost as uncomfortable as he felt. "Sorry?" "Apartment 4C. You're my upstairs neighbor. I'm 4B. "Right. Yes. Elena." He hadn't meant to use her name. It felt presumptuous somehow, but it slipped out before he could stop it. She raised an eyebrow. "You know my name?" "It's on your mailbox," he said quickly. "I notice things." "Occupational hazard?" "Something like that." Marcus gestured vaguely around the room. "How do you know the Morrisons?" "I don't, really. Jennifer and I were college roommates, but we haven't been close in years. I think she invited me out of obligation." Elena's tone was matter-of-fact, without self-pity. "You?" Jennifer's my cousin, on my mother's side. Ah, Elena nodded, as if this explained something. Family obligation, then. Something like that. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Around them, the reception was coming to life. The DJ testing the sound system, waiters circulating with champagne flutes, guests finding their seats and exclaiming over the centerpieces. Well, Elena said finally, I should find my table. Good luck surviving the evening. She moved away before Marcus could respond. He watched her navigate the crowd with the same hunched shoulder posture he recognized from his own movements, and something in his chest tightened unexpectedly. He wasn't the only one here who didn't want to be. Marcus found his seat at table 18 and immediately understood why he'd been placed there. The table was clearly the overflow section, the guests who didn't fit neatly into the bride's and groom's carefully organized social circles. An elderly great aunt sat across from him, already dozing. A couple from David's office whispered to each other in a way that suggested they'd rather be anywhere else. And an empty chair beside Marcus bore a place card for someone named R. Thompson, who apparently had better things to do. The seat on his other side remained empty throughout the salad course. Marcus ate mechanically, his eyes scanning the room without quite focusing on anything. He could see Jennifer at the head table, glowing with happiness as David fed her a bite of something. He could see his mother's side of the family clustered near the bar, their laughter carrying across the space. He could see couples leaning into each other, old friends reuniting, connections being forged and renewed. He saw none of it for him. The main course had just arrived when Elena appeared beside him. Do you mind if I sit here? She gestured at the empty chair. My assigned table is in the center of the room, and I can't. She stopped, shook her head. Never mind. It's fine. I'll just... Please, Marcus stood awkwardly, pulling out the chair. Sit. The person assigned here apparently didn't show up anyway. Elena hesitated, then sat. Thanks. I know it's weird abandoning my table, but there's a couple there who keep asking about my love life, and I just... She stopped again, pressing her lips together. Sorry, you don't need to hear this. It's fine. Marcus sat back down. I understand. The questions. Do you get them too? Every time. When are you going to find someone? A nice man like you shouldn't be alone. Have you tried the dating apps? He mimicked the concerned, intrusive tone perfectly, and Elena's lips twitched into something almost like a smile. You forgot, don't you want your daughter to have a mother figure? Marcus went still. How did you know I have a daughter? Elena's eyes widened slightly. Sorry, the walls are thin. I hear you on the phone with her sometimes. I wasn't eavesdropping. It's fine, Marcus said, though his voice had gone carefully neutral. Her name is Lily. She's 11. She sounds sweet, from what I've accidentally overheard. She is. He didn't elaborate, and Elena didn't push. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the kind of silence that felt more comfortable than conversation. Around them, the reception swirled with noise and movement. Speeches from the best man and maid of honor, clinking glasses demanding kisses from the bride and groom, the first dance that brought tears to half the room. Marcus watched it all from his corner table, feeling like an anthropologist studying a foreign culture. You hate this, Elena said quietly. It wasn't a question. I don't hate it. He searched for words that wouldn't make him sound pathetic. I don't know how to do this anymore. The socializing, the performing, pretending I belong somewhere I clearly don't. Elena nodded slowly. When did you stop believing you belonged? The question was too direct, too personal for someone he barely knew. But something about the dim lighting and the anonymity of the corner table and the simple fact of not being alone made Marcus answer honestly. 6 years ago, when my wife died. Elena didn't gasp or immediately apologize, as most people did. She just looked at him steadily, waiting. Car accident, Marcus continued, his voice flat with practiced distance. She was 3 months pregnant, our second child. Lily was 5. She doesn't really remember her mother, not clearly, and He stopped, surprised at himself. He never talked about this. Never. And you've been invisible ever since, Elena finished for him. Marcus looked at her sharply. What? I recognize it. The posture, the corner seats, the way you make yourself small so no one asks questions. She paused. I do the same thing. Why? Elena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful, measured. Anxiety, mostly. Some depression. A divorce that wasn't my choice. The usual catalog of modern dysfunction. She attempted a smile that didn't quite work. I'm working through it, slowly, but rooms full of happy people still feel like enemy territory. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a small loosening of the knot that had lived there for years. He wasn't the only one. He wasn't crazy or broken or fundamentally unfit for human society. He was just hurt, like her. Like so many others who sat in corners and hoped no one would notice them. Do you want to get some air? He heard himself ask. Elena looked surprised, then nodded. Yes. Actually, yes. They slipped out through the same side door Marcus had used to enter, finding themselves on a quiet terrace overlooking the Morrison Estate's formal gardens. The music from the reception was muffled here, just bass notes and occasional bursts of laughter penetrating the warm evening air. Marcus leaned against the stone railing and breathed deeply for the first time all night. Better? Elena asked. Much. They stood in comfortable silence, watching fireflies blink among the hedges. In the distance, the pavilion glowed like a lantern, full of life and celebration that felt impossibly far away. Can I ask you something? Elena said finally. You can ask. Why did you come tonight? If you hate these things so much, why not just not come? Marcus considered the question. My daughter, she wanted me to come. She worries about me, I think. She's 11 years old and she worries about her father's social life. He laughed quietly, without humor. That's not right, is it? No, Elena agreed. It's not. She keeps telling me I need to stop disappearing, that I'm allowed to take up space, that I matter. Marcus shook his head. She sounds like a therapist sometimes. I don't know where she gets it. Kids see things clearly before the world teaches them to make themselves small. Is that what happened to you? The world taught you to make yourself small? Elena was quiet for a moment. Something like that, but I'm trying to unlearn it. She paused. That's actually why I came tonight. I'm practicing. Practicing? Showing up, not running away, being present even when it's uncomfortable. She smiled ruefully. I'm not very good at it yet. Obviously, since I just abandoned my assigned table to hide in a corner with a stranger. Technically, I'm not a stranger. I'm your upstairs neighbor. The one who practices guitar at 7 a.m. on Saturdays? Marcus winced. Is it that loud? No, it's actually kind of nice, peaceful. Elena hesitated. I've thought about leaving a note, telling you to keep playing, but that seemed weird? Presumptuous. She smiled for real this time, and something about the expression made her whole face different, younger, softer, more open. I don't know anything about music. I just know it sounds like someone finding their way back to something they used to love. Marcus stared at her, struck silent by the accuracy of what she'd just said. The guitar had been Sarah's. He'd taken it down from the closet 6 months ago, started teaching himself to play using YouTube videos and sheer stubbornness. He didn't know why. He only knew that something in him needed to create, to make something beautiful out of the years of silence and survival. That's, he started, then stopped. That's very perceptive. I told you, the walls are thin. They stood in silence again, but it felt different now. Not the empty silence of strangers sharing space, but the fuller silence of two people who had recognized something in each other. The side door opened behind them, and a burst of music and light spilled onto the terrace. There you are. Marcus turned to see Jennifer approaching, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a cloud. She was flushed with champagne and happiness, her eyes sparkling. Marcus, I've been looking everywhere for you. You can't spend my whole wedding hiding outside. She reached him and threw her arms around his neck. I'm so glad you came. Really, Mom said you almost didn't. I almost didn't, Marcus admitted. But you did. You showed up. Jennifer pulled back, studying his face. And who's this? Elena Reyes. We're neighbors, actually. She was in college with you. Jennifer's face lit up with recognition. Elena! Oh my God, I barely recognized you. Your hair is so much longer now. She hugged Elena warmly. without the awkwardness that characterized most of Marcus's social interactions. "I'm so glad you came. I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Elena said, echoing Marcus's words. "But you did. Both of you." Jennifer beamed at them. "You know, I put you both at different tables on purpose. I thought you'd be more comfortable that way. More people to talk to." Marcus and Elena exchanged a glance. "We found each other anyway," Elena said. "Perfect." Jennifer clapped her hands together. "Then you have to come dance, both of you. No arguments. It's my wedding, and I want to see my favorite cousin and my old roommate actually participating instead of hiding in corners." "Jenny," Marcus started. "No excuses. One dance. That's all I'm asking." Jennifer grabbed his hand and Elena's, pulling them toward the door. "Come on, the DJ is about to play my favorite song." She led them back into the pavilion, into the noise and light and overwhelming presence of 200 celebrating guests. Marcus felt his shoulders automatically hunch, his instinct to disappear kicking in. But Elena was beside him, her own posture straightening slightly, her chin lifting. "Practicing," she'd said. "Showing up." Maybe he could practice too. The dance floor was crowded with couples swaying to a slow song Marcus vaguely recognized. Jennifer deposited them at the edge of the crowd and disappeared back to her new husband, leaving Marcus and Elena standing awkwardly in the middle of human happiness. "We don't have to," Marcus started. "I know." Elena was looking at the dancers with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read. "But we're here now, and she's watching." She was right. Jennifer was beaming at them from across the room, clearly expecting them to participate. "One dance," Marcus said. "That's all. That's all." He held out his hand, feeling foolish and exposed and terrified. Elena took it, and they stepped onto the dance floor. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd danced with anyone. The mechanical steps came back to him slowly, hand on waist, hand in hand, small movements in time with the music. Elena followed his lead with surprising grace, her body relaxing slightly as they found a rhythm. "You're better at this than I expected," she said. "My wife taught me. She loved dancing. My ex hated it. That should have been a warning sign." They moved in silence for a few measures, navigating the crowded floor. Around them, other couples swayed and laughed and held each other close. Marcus was acutely aware of Elena's hand in his, her warmth against his palm. He was also acutely aware of the whispers. They started at the edges of the dance floor and spread inward like ripples. People glancing their way, leaning in to murmur to their partners, looking at Marcus with expressions that ranged from curiosity to pity to something worse. "Isn't that Jennifer's cousin, the one whose wife died? I heard he never goes anywhere, just works and raises his daughter. Sad, really, a man like that, all alone. Who's he dancing with? Someone from the bride's side." Probably just being polite, poor thing. Marcus's jaw tightened. He should be used to this by now. The well-meaning pity, the casual dismissal, the assumption that his solitude was a problem to be solved rather than a choice to be respected. But tonight, for some reason, it cut deeper than usual. Maybe because Elena was hearing it too. "Ignore them," she murmured. "They don't know anything. They know enough. They know I'm here alone. That I don't belong. Neither do I. But we're here anyway." She met his eyes steadily. "That counts for something." The song ended. Marcus and Elena stepped apart, the moment dissolving as quickly as it had formed. Around them, guests applauded politely and began drifting back to their tables. "Thank you," Marcus said, "for the dance, and for everything else." It wasn't a sacrifice. Elena smiled slightly. "I'll see you around, Forsey." She disappeared into the crowd before he could respond. Marcus made his way back to table 18, his heart beating faster than the dance warranted. The elderly great-aunt had left, presumably to find somewhere quieter to doze. The work couple had vanished entirely. He was alone at the table, surrounded by empty chairs and half-finished plates. But somehow, he didn't feel as alone as he had before. The speeches continued. The cake was cut. More dancing, more champagne, more celebration of love and commitment and the future that Jennifer and David would build together. Marcus watched it all from his corner, nursing a glass of wine he'd barely touched. He He found himself scanning the room for Elena. She was at a table near the center, surrounded by the people she'd been avoiding earlier. But her posture had changed, less hunched, more present. She was actually participating in the conversation, nodding and occasionally speaking. As Marcus watched, she laughed at something someone said, and the sound carried across the room like a small miracle. She was practicing, and she was getting better at it. Maybe he could too. The thought came unbidden, surprising in its intensity. For 6 years, Marcus had assumed this was just how things would be. The solitude, the invisibility, the careful management of a life reduced to its most essential elements. Work, parenting, survival. Nothing more. But watching Elena practice being present, watching her push against her own instinct to disappear, something in Marcus stirred. A possibility he'd stopped believing in. Maybe he didn't have to be invisible forever. It was nearly 10 p.m. when the whispers reached a critical mass. Marcus was standing near the bar, finally having summoned the courage to get another drink, when he heard the conversation behind him. I just think it's sad, you know? A man his age coming to a wedding alone. No date, no prospects, just sitting in the corner all night. Well, his wife died. Jennifer told me. Some accident years ago. I know, but at some point you have to move on, don't you? He can't just hide from life forever. The daughter, though, poor thing, growing up without a mother. She probably needs stability, a female influence. That's what I mean. If he actually cared about her, he'd make an effort, put himself out there, but he just sits there, like he's waiting for permission to exist. Marcus's hand tightened around his empty glass. He should walk away. He always walked away. But something about tonight, the dance with Elena, her words about practicing presence, Lily's text urging him to have fun, made him want to turn around and say something, defend himself, assert his right to exist on his own terms. He didn't. He'd spent too many years being invisible to become visible in a moment. Instead, he set down his glass and headed for the exit. He'd stayed long enough. He'd shown his face, done his duty, proven to Jennifer that he was capable of basic family obligation. Now he could disappear, just like he always did. The night air hit his face as he stepped outside, cool, quiet, free of judgment. He walked toward the parking lot, his keys already in his hand. Marcus, he turned. Elena was hurrying after him, her heels clicking on the stone pathway. You're leaving, she said. It wasn't a question. I've been here 3 hours, that's enough. That's what you tell yourself, isn't it? That's enough. I've done enough. I've shown up enough. She stopped a few feet away, slightly breathless. But it's never actually enough, is it? You always feel like you haven't earned the right to stay. Marcus stared at her. How do you? Because I feel the same way. Every time. Every event, every gathering, every attempt to be normal. I spend the whole time calculating how long until I can leave, and then I leave early anyway because the waiting is worse than the loneliness after. Her words hit him with the force of recognition. She was describing his entire existence for the past 6 years. So why did you come after me? He asked. Elena hesitated. Because I saw your face when you heard those women talking, and I wanted to tell you. She stopped, shook her head. I don't know what I wanted to tell you, that they're wrong, that you're not sad or pathetic or whatever else they think, that you have just as much right to be here as anyone. Do I? Do I have the right to be here, surrounded by happy couples and intact families, when I'm none of those things? Yes. Her voice was firm, certain in a way that surprised him. You do. We do. Being alone doesn't make us less than. It doesn't mean we have to apologize for existing or make ourselves small so other people don't have to look at us. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The party continued behind them, muffled music and distant laughter floating across the gardens. Why do you care? He finally asked. We barely know each other. Elena smiled sadly. Because I've been watching you for 3 years, every morning, every evening, coming and going from that apartment like a ghost. Never making eye contact, never starting conversations, never taking up more space than absolutely necessary. And I thought I was looking at myself, a version of myself that had given up completely. I haven't given up. Haven't you? The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Marcus wanted to argue. He wanted to list all the ways he was still functioning: his job, his daughter, his guitar, his carefully maintained life. But the words wouldn't come, because somewhere deep inside he knew she was right. He had given up. On connection, on belonging, on the possibility that he could ever be anything more than the sum of his losses. "I don't know how to be any different," he said finally. "This is all I know how to be." "I know." Elena's voice was gentle. "That's why I came after you, because I wanted to tell you that different is possible, hard and slow and terrifying, but possible." She paused. "I'm not there yet. Not by a long shot, but I'm closer than I was a year ago. And a year ago, I was closer than the year before that." "How?" "By showing up, even when it's hard, even when every instinct tells me to disappear." She gestured back toward the pavilion. "Like tonight. Coming to this wedding was one of the hardest things I've done in months. But I did it anyway. And you know what? I survived. She laughed quietly. "I even danced." Marcus felt something crack inside him, a small fissure in the wall he'd built around himself. "You're very brave," he said. "Braver than I am." "I'm not brave. I'm just tired of being invisible." Elena met his eyes. "Aren't you tired too?" Before Marcus could answer, the side door opened and Jennifer's voice floated across the garden. "There you two are. What are you doing out here? They're about to do the bouquet toss." "We were just talking," Elena said. "Well, talk inside. It's cold out here, and I want both of you where I can see you." Jennifer appeared in the doorway, hands on her hips, the picture of bridal authority. "Marcus, I mean it. No more disappearing." Marcus looked at Elena. She raised her eyebrows slightly, a silent question. He thought about Lily's text, about practicing presence, about being tired of invisible. "Okay," he heard himself say. "We're coming." They walked back toward the pavilion together, not quite touching, but not quite apart. Behind them, the parking lot waited, full of cars that could carry them away from this noise and light and overwhelming humanity. But for the first time in 6 years, Marcus didn't want to leave early. He wanted to stay. The bouquet toss was already underway when Marcus and Elena slipped back into the pavilion. A cluster of single women had gathered on the dance floor, their faces turned upward with varying degrees of enthusiasm as Jennifer prepared to throw her flowers. Elena hung back near the edge of the crowd, clearly unwilling to participate, and Marcus found a spot beside her where they could watch without being noticed. Jennifer spun around and launched the bouquet in a high arc. It sailed over the reaching hands of the eager front row and landed, improbably, in the arms of a teenage girl who looked mortified by the attention. Laughter and applause rippled through the room. "That could have been me," Elena murmured. The mortified one. "You didn't want to try for it?" Catching a bouquet implies you believe in what it represents. Marriage, romance, happily ever after. She shrugged. "I'm not sure I believe in any of that anymore." Marcus understood. He'd stopped believing in happily ever after. The moment a police officer had knocked on his door at 2 a.m., hat in hand, words he couldn't process tumbling out about wet roads and overcorrection and instant death. "My wife caught the bouquet at her sister's wedding," he said quietly, 2 years before we got married. She was so happy. She kept the dried flowers in a box for years afterward. He paused. "I don't know what happened to that box. After she died, I couldn't look at most of her things." Elena didn't respond with platitudes or sympathy. She just stood beside him, a silent presence in the noise of celebration. The reception continued around them, the garter toss, which Marcus deliberately avoided. More dancing, the slow, inevitable wind down of a party that had peaked hours ago. Guests began drifting toward the exit, exchanging hugs and promises to stay in touch that both parties knew would go unfulfilled. Marcus checked his watch. Nearly 11 p.m. He'd stayed longer than he'd intended, longer than he'd stayed at any social event in years. The realization surprised him. "I should go," he said. "Long drive back." Elena nodded. "Me too. I took a ride share out here, but I should probably call one for the way back." "I can give you a ride. We live in the same building anyway." The offer came out before Marcus could second-guess it. Elena looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Are you sure? I don't want to inconvenience. It's not an inconvenience. It's literally on my way. She hesitated for a moment, then smiled. Okay. Thank you. They found Jennifer to say goodbye. She was surrounded by family and friends, glowing with exhaustion and happiness, but she broke away when she saw them approaching. You're leaving, both of you? She pulled Marcus into a tight hug. Thank you for coming. Thank you for staying. Thank you for inviting me. I almost didn't. Mom said you'd never come, that you'd find some excuse. Jennifer pulled back, her eyes slightly damp. I'm glad she was wrong. Me too. Jennifer hugged Elena next, then looked between them with an expression that made Marcus uncomfortable. You two should keep in touch. You seem like you understand each other. We're neighbors, Marcus said quickly. We see each other all the time. Neighbors who never talk, according to what Elena told me earlier. Jennifer's smile was knowing. Maybe that should change. Before either of them could respond, Jennifer was swept away by another wave of well-wishers. Marcus and Elena exchanged a glance and made their escape. The parking lot was quieter now, most of the guests having already departed. Marcus's car, a sensible Honda Civic that he'd bought 3 years ago because it was safe and reliable and utterly unremarkable, sat near the back of the lot. Sorry it's not more impressive, he said as they approached it. I don't have a car at all. I sold mine when I moved to the city. Didn't seem worth the hassle. Elena slid into the passenger seat. This is very clean. Lily insists on it. She has strong opinions about vehicle hygiene. She sounds like a remarkable kid. She is. Marcus started the engine. She's the best thing in my life. The only thing, really. They drove in silence for a few minutes, the dark countryside rolling past the windows. The Morrison estate faded behind them, its lights eventually disappearing entirely as they merged onto the highway. Can I ask you something personal? Elena said finally. You can ask. How did you do it? Raise her alone? After what happened? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, navigating a lane change before answering. I didn't have a choice. She needed a parent, and I was the only one left. You do what you have to do. You get up every morning because she needs breakfast. You go to work because she needs a roof. You keep breathing because she needs you to stay alive. That sounds exhausting. It was. Is. He paused. But it's also the only thing that kept me going. If I hadn't had Lily, I don't know what would have happened to me. Elena was silent for a moment. I didn't have a child when my marriage ended. Sometimes I wonder if that made it harder or easier. What do you mean? Having someone who needed me might have forced me to keep functioning. Instead, I could just collapse, fall apart completely. Her voice was carefully neutral. I spent 6 months barely leaving my apartment. Working from home made it easy to disappear. No one noticed, really. No one had to. Marcus glanced at her. In the dim light from the dashboard, her face was hard to read. But you came back. Eventually, slowly, therapy helped. Medication helped. Time helped, though I hate admitting that. She laughed quietly. Everyone tells you time heals all wounds. They don't tell you how much time or how much it hurts while you're waiting. 3 years, Marcus said. That's how long everyone told me it would take to feel normal again after Sarah died. They were wrong. You still don't feel normal? I don't even know what normal feels like anymore. I remember being happy, being present, being someone who looked forward to things. But it feels like remembering a movie I watched once, like it happened to someone else. Elena nodded slowly. I know exactly what you mean. They drove in silence for another few miles. The highway was nearly empty at this hour, just the occasional truck or late-night traveler passing in the other direction. It felt strangely intimate, this quiet car moving through the darkness. Two people who barely knew each other sharing truths they'd never told anyone. Why did you talk to me tonight? Marcus asked suddenly. At the reception. You could have stayed at your assigned table, suffered through the small talk, never acknowledged me at all. Elena took her time answering. I recognized you, not just from the building. I recognized something in you. The way you held yourself, the way you scanned the room for exits, the way you sat in the very back row hoping no one would notice you. She paused. I do all of those things, have been doing them for years. And I thought, I don't know what I thought. Maybe that we could be invisible together. Maybe that two invisible people could somehow see each other. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. That's pathetic? Presumptuous? I was going to say accurate. He gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. I felt invisible for so long. Even with Lily. She sees me, loves me, but she's a child. She doesn't understand what it means to move through the world feeling like a ghost. But I do. Yes, you do. The city lights appeared on the horizon, growing brighter as they approached. Their building was still 20 minutes away, but the sense of time running out settled over Marcus like a weight. This conversation, this connection, it would end when they reached the parking garage. They would go back to being neighbors who never talked, ghosts who passed each other in hallways without acknowledging each other's existence, unless something changed. Do you want to get coffee? Marcus heard himself ask. When we get back, there's a place on the corner that's open late. Elena looked at him, surprise evident in her expression. It's almost midnight. I know, He struggled to articulate what he was feeling. I'm not ready for this to be over. The talking, the whatever this is. She was quiet for a long moment, then she smiled, small but genuine. Coffee sounds good. The cafe on the corner was nearly empty at midnight, just a bored barista scrolling through her phone and an elderly man reading a newspaper in the corner. Marcus and Elena found a table by the window, cradling cups of coffee that neither of them particularly wanted. Tell me about Lily, Elena said. What's she like? Marcus felt his face soften automatically, the way it always did when he thought about his daughter. She's fierce and kind and smarter than me, which she likes to point out regularly. He smiled. She was so small when Sarah died, 5 years old. I had to tell her that Mommy wasn't coming home, and she just looked at me with these huge eyes and said, "But who will make pancakes?" Elena's breath caught. That's heartbreaking. It was, but it was also so Lily. She's always been practical. Even then, she was thinking about the logistics. Who will make breakfast? Who will braid my hair? Who will read me stories at night? Marcus shook his head. I learned to do all of it. Badly, at first, but I learned. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She's the reason I'm still here. He paused, considering whether to say the next part. She worries about me. Has for years. She's always encouraging me to go out, meet people, do normal things. Tonight was her idea, really. She practically ordered me to attend this wedding. She sounds wise for 11. Too wise. Sometimes I feel like I'm the child and she's the parent. He took a sip of coffee he didn't taste. She left me a voicemail before bed. I haven't listened to it yet. Why not? Because I know what it will say. Have fun, Daddy. Talk to people. Don't leave early. And I'll feel guilty for all the ways I've let her down. Elena leaned forward. You haven't let her down. You've kept her alive, kept her safe, given her a home and a parent who loves her. That's not letting someone down. It's not enough, though. She deserves a father who's fully present, who's happy, who isn't just going through the motions. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. She deserves so much more than I've been able to give her. She deserves a father who tries, and from what I can see, that's exactly what you are. Marcus looked at Elena, really looked at her, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not attraction exactly, though she was attractive in a quiet, understated way, more like recognition. Like finding someone who spoke a language he'd forgotten existed. Why are you being so kind to me? He asked. I'm not being kind. I'm being honest. Elena wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. I spent years surrounded by people who were kind to me. They said the right things, made the right gestures, performed sympathy beautifully, but none of them actually understood. None of them had been where I'd been, felt what I'd felt. She met his eyes. You understand. Even though our situations are different, you understand what it means to build yourself back from nothing. I haven't built myself back, I've just survived. Survival is building. Every day you get out of bed is a brick in the foundation. Every meal you make, every bill you pay, every bedtime story you read, those are all pieces of a life you're constructing from scratch. She smiled sadly. I wish someone had told me that when I was at my worst. that just staying alive was enough, that I didn't have to be transformed or healed or whole again. I just had to keep breathing. Marcus felt his eyes sting unexpectedly. He blinked hard, looking away. I can't remember the last time anyone talked to me like this. Like what? Like I'm a person, not a tragedy, not a cautionary tale, not a problem to be solved, just a person. That's because most people don't know how to talk to grief. They want to fix it, or minimize it, or compare it to their own experiences. They don't understand that sometimes the best thing you can do is just sit with someone and acknowledge that what they're going through is hard. Is that what you're doing? Sitting with me? I guess I am. Elena tilted her head slightly. Is that okay? More than okay. Marcus's voice was rough. I don't have words for what it is. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the occasional car pass by on the empty street. The barista had started cleaning up, preparing to close, but she didn't rush them. I should tell you something, Elena said finally, about why I really came to the wedding tonight. Marcus looked at her questioningly. Jennifer called me last month, out of the blue. We hadn't spoken in years, but she called and said she was worried about her cousin Marcus, said he'd been isolating himself ever since his wife died, and she thought maybe— Elena stopped, shaking her head. This is going to sound crazy. What? She asked if I would talk to you at the wedding. She knew we lived in the same building. I mentioned it when I RSVP'd, and she thought maybe, since we were both going through hard times, we might— Elena laughed uncomfortably. She was matchmaking, or something close to it. I didn't know how to tell her that I was in no position to help anyone, that I could barely help myself. Marcus absorbed this information slowly. So you came to the wedding to what? Save me? No, God, no. Elena shook her head firmly. I came because Jennifer's request made me angry. At her, for assuming she knew what you needed. At myself, for being so obviously broken that people thought I was qualified to fix other broken people. She paused. But then I saw you, sitting in that back row, hunched over like you were trying to disappear into the chair. And I wasn't angry anymore. I just recognized you. And you sat down next to me. I sat down next to you, not because Jennifer asked me to, but because I wanted to. Because for the first time in months, I felt like I might not be completely alone. Marcus didn't know what to say. His cousin had tried to set him up with someone, which should have felt invasive and presumptuous. But somehow, knowing that Elena had chosen to approach him, chosen to see him, made it feel different. I should be angry, he said slowly, at Jennifer, for meddling. Are you? He considered the question honestly. No, I'm grateful, actually. If she hadn't invited you, if you hadn't come, I would have spent the whole night alone in that corner. I would have left early and driven home and felt exactly as invisible as I always do. Instead, I danced, I talked, I stayed until almost midnight at a party I didn't want to attend. He smiled slightly, and now I'm having coffee with my neighbor for the first time in 3 years. Big night for you. Huge night, practically a revolution. Elena laughed, and the sound was warm and unexpected and made something in Marcus's chest loosen. We should probably let them close, she said, gesturing at the barista who was now pointedly sweeping near their table. Right. Yes. Marcus stood, leaving a generous tip on the table. I'll walk you home. We live in the same building. You'd be walking yourself home. Then I'll walk myself home. And you can happen to be walking in the same direction. They stepped out into the cool night air, the street quiet and empty around them. Their building was only a block away, its familiar facade visible from where they stood. Thank you, Elena said as they started walking, for the ride, and the coffee, and everything else. Thank you for seeing me, for talking to me like I'm a person. Marcus hesitated. Can we do this again sometime? Not the wedding part, just the talking part. Elena smiled. I'd like that. They reached the building's entrance and paused awkwardly, neither quite sure how to end the evening. The lobby was empty, the night doorman nowhere in sight. I'm on the 4th floor, Elena said, as if he didn't already know. I know, I'm 1 floor up. Right. She laughed nervously. Well, good night, Marcus. Good night, Elena. She turned toward the elevator, then stopped and looked back. Marcus? Yes? Listen to your daughter's voicemail. Whatever she says, whatever you're afraid of hearing, she left it because she loves you. That's worth something. Before he could respond, she was gone, disappearing into the elevator. Marcus stood in the empty lobby for a long moment, her words echoing in his mind. Finally, he pulled out his phone and navigated to his voicemail. Lily's voice filled his ear, bright and clear and full of love. Hi, Daddy. I hope you're having fun at Cousin Jenny's wedding. I know you didn't want to go, but I'm proud of you for going anyway. Remember what I always tell you. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be seen. You're the best dad in the whole world, and anyone would be lucky to know you. Okay, I have to go to sleep now because Mrs. Patterson says lights out in 5 minutes. But I love you so much. And Daddy, don't leave early. Stay until the end. You might miss something important if you leave too soon. Love you. Bye. Marcus stood in the lobby, his phone pressed to his ear, and felt tears running down his face. He hadn't left early. He'd stayed until almost the end. And Lily was right. He would have missed something important if he'd left too soon. He would have missed Elena. The next morning, Marcus woke to sunlight streaming through his bedroom window and the sound of his guitar in the corner, waiting. He lay still for a moment, orienting himself to the strange new feeling in his chest. Hope. That's what it was. A small, fragile thing he'd almost forgotten how to recognize. He showered, dressed, and made coffee in his quiet kitchen. The apartment felt different today, not emptier exactly, but more aware of its emptiness. Like the silence was waiting to be filled. At exactly 7 a.m., he picked up his guitar and started to play. It was a simple song, one he'd been learning for weeks. His fingers stumbled over the chord changes, the melody rough and imperfect. But he played it anyway, played it all the way through, because Lily was right. He deserved to be happy. He deserved to take up space. He deserved to make noise in the world. When he finished, he set the guitar down and listened to the silence of his apartment. Except it wasn't quite silent. From somewhere below him, from 4B, came the sound of a knock on a wall. 3 slow taps, barely audible. Marcus smiled. He walked to the wall and knocked back. 3 taps, just as slow. A pause. Then, from below, a single tap. Acknowledgement. Recognition. A tiny Morse code of connection between 2 people who had spent years being invisible. Marcus stood there for a long moment, his palm flat against the wall, feeling something shift inside him. For 6 years, he'd been building walls. Between himself and the world, between himself and other people, between the person he used to be and the ghost he'd become. But walls could be knocked on. Walls could have doors. Walls could be windows if you were brave enough to look through them. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hi. It's Elena. I got your number from the building directory. I hope that's not weird. He stared at the message, then typed back, Not weird. I was just thinking about you. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I heard you playing guitar. It sounded beautiful. It sounded like a beginner fumbling through chord changes. Same thing. Marcus laughed out loud, surprising himself. When was the last time he'd laughed in his own apartment, with no one else present? Another text. I'm making pancakes. Do you want to come down? He thought about Lily's question from 6 years ago. But who will make pancakes? He'd learned to make them himself eventually, lumpy and misshapen, but edible. Lily had declared them perfect because they came from him. Now someone else was offering pancakes, someone who understood invisibility and survival and the long, slow work of building yourself back from nothing. Marcus typed, Give me 10 minutes. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door, then stopped. He walked back to the kitchen counter and picked up the wedding invitation that still sat there, its cream envelope slightly crumpled from weeks of avoidance. Mr. Marcus Chen and guest. He'd gone alone, but he hadn't come home alone, not really. He'd come home with something he'd lost years ago. The possibility of connection. Marcus set down the invitation and walked out the door, heading downstairs to apartment 4B. Elena answered on the second knock. She was wearing sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked nothing like the put-together woman in the blue dress from the night before. She looked real. Hi, she said. Hi. They stood there for a moment, awkward and uncertain, before Elena stepped back and gestured him inside. I wasn't sure you'd actually come. I wasn't sure either. Marcus looked around her apartment, taking in the details. Plants on every surface, on windowsills, on bookshelves, crowding the corners. A small desk covered in computer equipment. Framed photographs on the walls, most of them featuring landscapes and cityscapes rather than people. I like your plants, he said. They're my hobby, or my obsession. The line is blurry. Elena moved toward the kitchen. The pancakes are almost ready. I hope you like blueberries. I love blueberries. Lily mentioned them once. I heard her through the wall. Marcus felt a flush of embarrassment. How much have you heard? Through the walls? Not as much as you're probably worried about. Mostly just the guitar and occasional phone calls. Elena flipped a pancake with practiced ease. I wasn't eavesdropping intentionally. Sound just carries in this building. It does. I hear your conference calls sometimes. You work in tech? Data analysis. Very boring to explain, but it pays the bills and lets me work from home. She slid a plate toward him. Here, eat. The pancakes were perfect, golden and fluffy, studded with blueberries. Marcus took a bite and felt something unlock in his chest. These are incredible. My grandmother's recipe. It's the one thing I kept from my marriage, the recipe box she gave us as a wedding gift. Elena sat down across from him with her own plate. Everything else, I threw away or donated. But the recipes felt like hers, not his. That makes sense. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The morning light streamed through Elena's windows, illuminating the leaves of her countless plants. Marcus noticed a small photo on the refrigerator, Elena with a group of women, all laughing at something outside the frame. College friends, Elena said, following his gaze. From before everything went wrong. We don't talk much anymore. Why not? Because I pulled away. After the divorce, after the collapse, I stopped returning calls and texts. I told myself I was protecting them from my depression. Really, I was just too ashamed to let them see what I'd become. She poked at her pancake. By the time I felt ready to reach out again, years had passed. It felt too late. It's never too late. Isn't it? How do you explain a 3-year absence? How do you pick up a friendship you deliberately abandoned? Marcus thought about his own abandoned friendships, the couples who had been his and Sarah's friends, who had called and visited and tried to stay connected in the months after her death. He'd pushed them all away, one by one, until the calls stopped coming and the invitations dried up. I don't know, he admitted. I did the same thing. After Sarah died, I cut everyone off. It was easier than explaining why I couldn't be normal anymore. And now? Now I've been alone so long I don't know how to be anything else. He set down his fork. Except, last night didn't feel like being alone. It felt like something different. Elena met his eyes. It felt like being seen. Yes, exactly. They sat with that truth for a moment, letting it settle between them. Outside, the city was waking up, cars passing, pedestrians walking dogs, the ordinary sounds of a Sunday morning. I want to try something, Elena said suddenly, if you're open to it. What kind of something? Practicing, together. She leaned forward. You said you don't know how to be visible anymore. I'm still learning myself. What if we practiced together? Pushed each other to show up, to take up space, to stop disappearing. Like accountability partners? Like friends, who happen to understand what it means to rebuild a life from scratch. She smiled hesitantly. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people trying to be less invisible together. Marcus considered the offer. It was more than he'd expected, more than he'd allowed himself to hope for. But something about the morning light and the perfect pancakes, and Elena's earnest expression made him want to say yes. Okay, he heard himself say. Let's practice. Elena's smile widened into something genuine and warm. Okay, good, that's good. They finished their pancakes and talked for another hour. About nothing important, about everything important. Their childhoods, their careers, their fears, and small victories. Marcus told her about learning to braid Lily's hair from YouTube tutorials. Elena told him about the time she'd killed an entire office worth of plants by overwatering them. When Marcus finally stood to leave, it was almost noon. The morning had disappeared without him noticing. Same time next weekend? Elena asked as she walked him to the door. I'd like that, but I should warn you, Lily will be home by then. She might want to meet you. I'd like to meet her. From what I've heard through the walls, she seems pretty great. She is. She's the best thing I've ever done. Marcus paused at the door. Thank you, Elena, for last night, for this morning, for seeing you? Yes, for that. Elena reached out and squeezed his hand briefly. Thank you for letting me. Marcus walked back upstairs to his apartment, feeling lighter than he had in years. His phone buzzed, a text from Lily, sent from her school trip. How was the wedding? Did you stay until the end? Tell me everything. He smiled and typed back, I stayed until the end. And I met someone. The response came immediately, a string of exclamation points and emojis that made him laugh out loud. What? Who? Dad. This is the best news ever. Calm down. She's just a neighbor. We had coffee and pancakes. That's all. That's not all. That's everything. When do I get to meet her? When you get home. Now pay attention to your trip and stop texting your father. Fine, but I want details when I get back. Love you, Dad. Love you too, sweetheart. Marcus set down his phone and looked around his apartment. The same furniture, the same walls, the same quiet spaces he'd inhabited for years. But something had shifted. The silence didn't feel quite so heavy. The rooms didn't feel quite so empty. He walked to the wall that separated his apartment from Elena's, placed his palm flat against it, and smiled. 3 floors down and 1 day forward, his life was starting to change. And for the first time in 6 years, he wasn't afraid of the change. He was ready for it. Lily came home on a Tuesday evening, bursting through the apartment door with her duffel bag and a museum gift shop tote stuffed with souvenirs. She dropped everything in the middle of the hallway and threw herself at Marcus with the full force of an 11-year-old who had been away from her father for 4 days. Dad, I missed you so much. The trip was amazing, but I couldn't stop thinking about the wedding and your mystery neighbor, and you have to tell me everything right now. Marcus laughed, wrapping his arms around her and breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo mixed with the staleness of bus travel. Hello to you too. How was Boston? Boston was great. The Science Museum was incredible. I learned about black holes and DNA, and there was this whole exhibit on bioluminescence, but none of that matters right now because you met someone. Lily pulled back, her dark eyes searching his face with an intensity that made her look far older than her years. Tell me, everything. Now. Let me at least get you some dinner first. I ate on the bus, trail mix and an apple. I'm fine. She grabbed his hand and dragged him toward the couch. Sit, talk, go. Marcus sat, marveling as he often did at his daughter's ability to command a room. She'd gotten that from Sarah. The confidence, the directness, the absolute certainty that her needs and wants were worth expressing. He'd spent 6 years trying to nurture that quality in her while watching it slowly drain out of himself. Her name is Elena, he began. She lives in 4B. We've been neighbors for 3 years, but we never really talked until the wedding. Why not? Because I don't talk to anyone, Lily. You know that. I know. It's sad. Continue. Marcus smiled despite himself. She was at the wedding too. We ended up sitting together, and we talked, and he paused, searching for words that would make sense to an 11-year-old. We understood each other. She's been through hard things too. Different hard things than us, but hard nonetheless. Lily nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. Is she nice? Yes, very nice. Is she pretty? Lily. What? It's a valid question. Marcus hesitated. She's kind and interesting, and she makes really good pancakes. You had pancakes with her? Lily's eyes widened. Dad, that's like a date. Breakfast is the most intimate meal. Where did you learn that? Emma's older sister says so. She's in high school. Well, it wasn't a date. It was just breakfast. Between neighbors who are trying to be friends. Lily studied him with that uncanny perception she'd developed, the ability to see through his careful deflections to the truth underneath. You like her. Marcus stopped. He didn't know how to answer that question honestly without complicating things. I like talking to her. I like that she doesn't expect me to be someone I'm not. That's the same thing as liking her, Dad. That's literally the definition. Before Marcus could formulate a response, there was a knock at the door. 3 soft taps, in what had become a familiar rhythm over the past 4 days. Lily's head whipped toward the sound. Is that her? Probably. We've been... Marcus gestured vaguely, checking in with each other, knocking. Oh my gosh. You have a secret knock system? Dad, that is so romantic. It's not romantic, it's just... But Lily was already off the couch and heading for the door. Marcus followed, trying to catch her arm, but she was too quick. She flung the door open to reveal Elena standing in the hallway, holding a small potted plant with purple flowers. Hi, Lily said brightly. You must be Elena. I'm Lily. My dad told me almost nothing about you, which means he definitely likes you. Elena blinked, clearly caught off guard by the 11-year-old tornado that had just greeted her. Yes, I'm Elena. It's nice to meet you, Lily. I've heard a lot about you. Good things? Only good things. Lily beamed. I like her already, Dad. She can come in. She stepped aside with a theatrical flourish, and Elena entered the apartment looking slightly shell-shocked. She caught Marcus's eye and raised an eyebrow questioningly. He shrugged apologetically. I brought this for you, Elena said, holding out the plant. It's an African violet. They're hard to kill, which seemed appropriate given... She stopped, glancing at Lily. Given that you're probably busy. I love it, Marcus said, taking the plant. Thank you. Is that for my dad or for our apartment? Lily asked. Because I've been telling him we need more plants. This place is too beige. Lily, Marcus said warningly. What? It's true. We have no color anywhere. It's like living in a cardboard box. Elena laughed, the sound bright and unexpected in Marcus's beige apartment. I can help with that. I have a lot of plants. Too many, probably. You can never have too many plants, Lily said firmly. That's scientifically impossible. That's not... Marcus started. It is. We learned about it at the Science Museum. Plants produce oxygen and reduce stress and improve air quality. There's no upper limit on the benefits. I don't think that's exactly what they said. It's what they meant. Lily turned back to Elena with the intensity of a prosecutor. So, you met my dad at Cousin Jenny's wedding. What were your first impressions? Lily! It's a fair question. Elena sat down on the couch, apparently accepting that she was going to be interrogated. My first impression was that he looked like someone who wanted to be anywhere else. He was sitting in the very last row, practically hiding behind a flower arrangement. Lily nodded sagely. That sounds like Dad. He hides at every event. I noticed, but I also noticed that he stayed. Even though he clearly didn't want to be there, he stayed for the whole ceremony. Elena glanced at Marcus, something soft in her expression. That takes a certain kind of strength, showing up when you'd rather disappear. Lily was quiet for a moment, considering this. My dad is strong. He doesn't think so, but he is. He's been taking care of me by himself for 6 years, and he never complains. Well, sometimes he complains about my music being too loud, but that's different. Your music is objectively too loud. Volume is subjective, Dad. Elena laughed again. I can see why you two get along. We're a team, Lily said simply. It's been just us for a long time, but I've been telling Dad he needs more people. You can't live on a team of 2 forever. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning that Lily probably didn't fully understand, but Marcus felt acutely. For 6 years, he and Lily had been a complete unit, father and daughter against the world. He told himself that was enough, that they didn't need anyone else, that their little team was sufficient for survival. But survival wasn't the same as living, and Lily, with her 11-year-old wisdom, seemed to understand that better than he did. Would you like to stay for dinner? Marcus heard himself ask. I was going to make pasta. Can she, Dad? Please? Lily clasped her hands together beseechingly. I have so many more questions. Elena hesitated, glancing between Marcus and his daughter. I don't want to intrude on your reunion. You just got home from your trip. You're not intruding, Lily said firmly. You're being invited. Those are completely different things. She's right, Marcus added. Please stay, if you want to. Elena's face softened into a smile. Okay, I'd like that. Dinner turned out to be an unexpectedly chaotic affair. Lily insisted on helping with the cooking, which meant Marcus had to navigate around her constant motion while Elena watched from a stool at the kitchen island. The conversation flowed in unpredictable directions, from Lily's detailed recap of the Science Museum exhibits, to Elena's explanation of her work in data analysis, to Marcus's halting attempts to describe his job as a software engineer. So you both do computer stuff, Lily summarized. That's boring. Thanks, Marcus said dryly. I'm just saying, neither of you does anything that would make a good story. And then the software engineer optimized the database is not exactly thrilling. What would you prefer? And then the software engineer fought off pirates while optimizing the database? Yes, exactly. Why can't you fight pirates? There are very few pirates in corporate IT. That you know of. Elena was laughing again, that warm, bright sound that Marcus was starting to crave. Lily, what do you want to be when you grow up? A marine biologist, or a detective, or a marine biologist who also solves crimes. Like if dolphins were being murdered, I would study them and catch the killer. That's oddly specific. I've thought about it a lot. They ate at the small dining table that Marcus usually used as a surface for mail and unopened bills. Lily had insisted on setting it properly, with napkins and water glasses and the salt and pepper shakers that had been collecting dust in a cabinet. This is nice, she announced, surveying the scene with satisfaction. We never use this table. We use it sometimes. We eat on the couch and watch TV, Dad. That doesn't count. It counts as efficiency. It counts as sad bachelor behavior. Lily turned to Elena. Has he told you about his guitar? I've heard him play. The walls are thin. He's been learning for 6 months. He's actually getting good, but he won't play for anyone except himself. And me sometimes, but only when he thinks I'm not paying attention. Marcus felt heat rise to his face. Lily, you should play for Elena. She appreciates music. She told me earlier that she used to play piano. Elena raised her eyebrows. You remember that? I mentioned it once, briefly. I have an excellent memory. It's one of my many gifts. Lily took a bite of pasta, then pointed her fork at Marcus. Play something, Dad. After dinner, please? I don't think Elena wants to. I'd love to hear you play, Elena interrupted softly. If you're willing. Marcus looked between his daughter's eager face and Elena's gentle encouragement. 6 months ago, he would have refused. 6 weeks ago, even. But something about this evening, the laughter, the chaos, the way his apartment felt fuller than it had in years, made him want to try. One song, he said finally. One, and no commentary from the peanut gallery. I am not a peanut gallery, Lily protested. I am a sophisticated audience. After dinner, Marcus retrieved his guitar from its corner of the living room. His hands were sweating slightly as he settled onto the couch, positioning the instrument against his body. Elena sat in the armchair across from him, while Lily perched on the arm of the couch like an expectant bird. This is a song I've been learning, Marcus said, his voice slightly rough. It's not perfect. I'm still working on the transitions. Just play, Dad. He took a breath and began. The song was simple, an acoustic version of something he'd loved years ago when music was still part of his life. His fingers moved carefully over the strings, occasionally stumbling but mostly finding their way. He didn't look up as he played, keeping his eyes fixed on his hands, but he could feel the silence of the room around him. When he finished, the last note hanging in the air, he finally raised his eyes. Lily was smiling with something that looked like pride. Elena was wiping at her eyes. That was beautiful, Elena said quietly. Really, truly beautiful. The fourth chord change was rough. I didn't notice. I was too busy listening to the music. Lily bounced off the couch arm and threw her arms around Marcus from behind. That's the best you've ever played, Dad. The absolute best. Marcus set down the guitar and hugged his daughter back, feeling something crack open in his chest. For 6 years, he'd been performing grief, going through the motions, checking the boxes, surviving but never living. And here, In this small moment, with his daughter's arms around his neck and a near stranger crying at his music, he felt something he'd forgotten existed. Joy. Small and fragile and new, but definitely there. "Thank you," he said, not sure who he was thanking. Lily for pushing him, Elena for listening, or something larger and more inexplicable. "Thank you." Elena left around 9 o'clock, after helping clean up the kitchen despite Marcus's protests. Lily walked her to the door with the gravity of a hostess seeing off an honored guest. "You should come back," Lily said. "Soon. We could do this every week." "Lily, you can't just—" Marcus started. "Why not? It was fun." "Wasn't it fun, Elena?" "It was fun," Elena agreed, smiling. "The most fun I've had in a long time." "See? Then it's settled. Weekly dinners. I'll add it to the calendar." "We don't have a calendar." "I'll make one. For this specific purpose." Lily hugged Elena quickly, a gesture that surprised everyone, including herself. "Thank you for coming, and for the plant, and for making my dad smile. He doesn't do that enough." Elena looked slightly stunned by the hug, but she recovered quickly. "Thank you for letting me be part of your evening. It was—" She stopped, shaking her head. "It was really special." After she left, Lily turned to Marcus with her hands on her hips. "I approve." "Approve of what?" "Of her. Elena. As a potential—" She waved her hand vaguely. "Person in our lives." "She's just a friend, Lily." "Okay. I'm serious." "I know you are. You're always serious." Lily patted his arm with the condescension of someone 3 times her age. "But you looked at her the way you used to look at Mom in the old videos." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Lily, I'm not saying it's the same. I'm not saying you have to marry her or even date her. I'm just saying—" Lily paused, her expression softening into something older and wiser than 11 years. "You're allowed to be happy again, Dad. Mom would want that." "How do you know what Mom would want?" "Because I have her eyes. And I know what I would want if I were gone and you were still here." Lily hugged him fiercely. "I would want you to be happy. That's all. Just happy." Marcus held his daughter tight, feeling tears he'd suppressed for years beginning to surface. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just don't pay attention." He laughed despite himself, a wet, broken sound. "I love you, Lily. More than anything in the world." "I know, I love you too." She pulled back and looked at him seriously. "Now, about this weekly dinner thing, I'm thinking Wednesdays. We haven't even asked Elena if she wants—" "She does. Trust me. I can tell these things." Lily headed toward her bedroom. "I'm going to bed. School tomorrow. But think about Wednesdays. It's a good night. Nothing on TV." She disappeared into her room, leaving Marcus standing in the hallway of his apartment, feeling like his life had shifted on its axis without warning. He walked to the wall that separated his apartment from Elena's and raised his hand. 3 soft taps. A moment later, 3 taps came back. Marcus smiled, pressed his palm flat against the wall, and let himself feel hope. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm Marcus hadn't experienced since before Sarah's death. Wednesday dinners became tradition, with Lily presiding over the menus and conversation topics like a miniature social director. Elena brought a new plant each week, a peace lily, a snake plant, a sprawling pothos that Lily immediately named Gerald. "Why Gerald?" Elena asked. "He looks like a Gerald," Lily said, as if this were obvious. "How does a plant look like any particular name?" "You have to see it with your heart, not your eyes." Marcus watched these exchanges with a mixture of wonder and terror. Wonder at how naturally Elena fit into their lives, how easily she navigated Lily's peculiar logic and Marcus's awkward silences. Terror at how much he was starting to depend on her presence, how empty the apartment felt on the days she wasn't there. They started having coffee together on Saturday mornings, after Marcus's guitar practice. Elena would knock on his door at exactly 8 a.m., carrying her own mug, and they would sit on his small balcony and watch the city wake up. The conversations were never about anything significant, the weather, work frustrations, Lily's latest school project, but they felt significant. They felt like the building blocks of something Marcus wasn't quite ready to name. One Saturday, About a month into this new routine, Elena arrived for coffee with a different expression on her face. Worried, Marcus realized. She looked worried. "What's wrong?" he asked as she settled into her usual chair on the balcony. Elena hesitated. "I got a phone call this morning from my ex-husband." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Oh. It's the first time he's contacted me in over a year since the divorce was finalized." She stared at her coffee, not meeting his eyes. "He said he made a mistake, that he wants to talk. See if there's any possibility of—" She stopped, shaking her head. "Of what?" "Of reconciling, trying again." Elena laughed bitterly. "After everything he put me through, the lies, the gaslighting, the affair that ended our marriage, he wants to try again." Marcus didn't know what to say. He'd never heard Elena talk about her ex-husband in detail, only vague references to a divorce that hadn't been her choice. Hearing her say these words, lies, gaslighting, affair, made something protective flare in his chest. "What did you tell him?" he asked carefully. "I told him I needed time to think," which was a coward's answer, because I already know what I want to say. She finally looked at Marcus, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I want to say no. I want to tell him that I've spent 3 years rebuilding the life he destroyed, and I'm not going to let him tear it down again. But there's a part of me that still wonders if I'm the problem, if I drove him away, if the whole thing was my fault because I wasn't enough." The tears spilled over, tracing silent tracks down her cheeks. "I know that's not true. Logically, I know. But feelings aren't logical." Marcus reached across the small gap between their chairs and took her hand. She looked down at their intertwined fingers with something like surprise. "You're not the problem," he said quietly. "I've only known you for a few weeks, but I can tell you with absolute certainty, you are not the problem." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've seen the way you show up. For yourself, for me, for Lily. You're one of the bravest people I've ever met." He squeezed her hand gently. It takes a certain kind of courage to rebuild after someone breaks you, to choose to be visible again when hiding feels so much safer. Elena stared at him, the tears still falling. "You say things like that and I don't know how to respond." "You don't have to respond. You just have to hear it." They sat in silence for a long moment, their hands still linked. The morning sun was warm on Marcus's face, and he could hear the distant sounds of the city, traffic, birdsong, a neighbor's radio playing jazz. It felt peaceful. It felt right. "What would you do?" Elena asked finally. "If Sarah came back somehow, if you got a call saying she wanted to try again?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd never considered it, never allowed himself to imagine such an impossibility. "I don't know," he admitted. "For a long time I would have said yes without hesitation. I would have done anything to have her back." He paused, searching for words. "But I'm not the same person I was when she died. I've changed. Lily's changed. We've built a life without her, not because we wanted to, but because we had to. And I think—" He stopped, surprised by the realization forming in his mind. "I think if she came back, I would mourn the person I'd become, the version of me that learned how to survive without her." Elena nodded slowly. "That's how I feel about my ex. If I went back, I would lose the version of myself that I fought so hard to become." "Then don't go back. It's not that simple, isn't it?" Marcus turned to face her fully. "You told me you spent 3 years rebuilding. Every day you got out of bed, every meal you made, every time you showed up at a wedding or a neighbor's door or a Saturday morning coffee, those were all bricks in the foundation. You built something real out of nothing. Why would you give that up for someone who doesn't deserve it?" Elena was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You make it sound so clear." "It is clear, from the outside. I know it's harder when you're inside it." She laughed shakily. "When did you become so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just—" He searched for the right word. "Grateful. For the past few weeks. For you. And I don't want to see you go backward when you've come so far." Elena looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then, slowly she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his cheek. It was brief, barely a second, but Marcus felt it like an earthquake. "Thank you," she said softly, "for seeing me, for believing I'm brave when I don't feel brave at all." "You are brave," he said, his voice rough. "You're the bravest person I know." She pulled back, wiping at her eyes with her free hand. Their other hands were still linked, neither of them willing to let go. "I'm going to call him back," she said, "today, and I'm going to tell him no." "Good. And then I'm going to come to Wednesday dinner and let Lily interrogate me about my feelings, and I'm going to let her because she's annoyingly insightful, and also I love her." Marcus smiled despite the intensity of the moment. "She does love an interrogation. She's going to be a detective someday, or a talk show host, or a detective who also hosts a talk show. Marine biologist, detective talk show host. That too." Elena squeezed his hand one final time before releasing it. "I should go. Make the call. Rip off the bandage." "Do you want me to stay for moral support?" She considered for a moment, then shook her head. "No, this is something I need to do alone, but—" She hesitated at the balcony door. "Maybe after. We could get lunch or something to celebrate my newfound backbone." "I'd like that." Elena smiled, bright and genuine despite her tear-stained face. "See you in a few hours, Marcus." She left, and Marcus sat alone on his balcony, his heart pounding with something he'd almost forgotten how to recognize. He was falling for her, slowly, carefully, inevitably falling, and for the first time in 6 years, the thought of loving someone again didn't fill him with terror. It filled him with hope. 3 hours later, Elena knocked on Marcus's door. Her eyes were red, but her shoulders were straight, and there was something different in the way she held herself, a lightness, as if she'd set down a weight she'd been carrying for years. "It's done," she said. "I told him no." Marcus stepped back to let her in. "How do you feel?" "Terrified. Relieved. Like I might throw up." She laughed shakily. "Is that normal?" "I think that's exactly normal." Lily emerged from her room, drawn by the sound of voices. She took one look at Elena's face and immediately switched into caretaker mode. "You need tea. And cookies." "Dad, we have cookies, right?" "We might have some. I'll find them. Sit down, Elena. You look like you've been through something." Elena sat on the couch, accepting Lily's fussing with a mixture of gratitude and amusement. "Your daughter is going to make an excellent nurse someday." "Marine biologist, detective, talk show host, nurse," Marcus corrected. "Obviously, all of those things." Lily returned from the kitchen with a mug of tea and a slightly stale package of chocolate chip cookies. "Here, drink, eat, feel better." "Thank you, Lily." "You're welcome. Now." Lily settled onto the floor cross-legged, her face serious. "Do you want to talk about it? Because I'm an excellent listener. Dad says so." Marcus caught Elena's eye, silently asking if she wanted him to redirect his daughter. But Elena shook her head slightly and turned to face Lily. "I had to make a hard decision today. Someone from my past wanted me to go back to the way things used to be. But the way things used to be wasn't good for me. So I said no." Lily nodded slowly, processing this information. "Like when Emma tried to get me to be friends with Madison again after Madison was mean to me for a whole year. And I said no because I didn't want to go back to feeling bad about myself." "Exactly like that." "That's smart. Going backward is dumb. You should only go forward." Lily picked up a cookie and took a decisive bite. "My mom used to say that. At least that's what Dad tells me. I don't really remember her saying it, but I remember the feeling of it. Like she was always looking ahead." Marcus felt his throat tighten. He didn't talk about Sarah often with Lily. It was too painful, and he worried about burdening his daughter with his own grief. But here was Lily, bringing her mother into the conversation as naturally as breathing. "Your mom sounds like she was very wise," Elena said softly. "Dad says she was the smartest person he ever knew, and the funniest, and the best at making pancakes." Lily glanced at Marcus with a slight smile. "Though your pancakes are pretty good too." "I appreciate the comparison. It's a high compliment. Mom's pancakes were legendary." The three of them sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Marcus watched Elena sip her tea, watched Lily nibble on her cookie, and felt something settle in his chest. This was what family felt like. Not just the two of them against the world, but something larger, something with room to grow. Can I ask you something? Lily said suddenly, looking at Elena. Of course. Do you like my dad? Like him? Lily! Marcus felt heat flood his face. What? It's a reasonable question. You two are always looking at each other with those faces. What faces? You know, the faces. Lily demonstrated what she apparently thought was a love-struck expression, which looked more like someone experiencing digestive distress. Those faces. Elena was trying very hard not to laugh. I think your dad and I are still figuring things out. That's a non-answer. It's the only answer I have right now. Lily considered this, then nodded. Okay. But for the record, I would be fine with it. If you liked him, just so you know. Lily, that's enough, Marcus said, his voice strangled. I'm just providing relevant information. Communication is important. Elena did laugh then, a bright sound that filled the apartment. You're right. Communication is important, so let me communicate clearly. She set down her tea and looked at Lily with complete seriousness. I care about your dad. Very much. He's become one of the most important people in my life over the past few weeks. But whatever happens between us, it will happen slowly and carefully because I also care about you, and you're part of the package. Lily's face softened. That's a good answer. I thought so. You can stay for dinner. I was already planning to. Good. Lily stood up, brushing cookie crumbs from her pants. I'm going to do my homework now. You two can have your alone time. She made air quotes around the last two words, then disappeared into her room with the confidence of someone who had accomplished everything she'd set out to do. Marcus stared after her, then turned to Elena. I'm so sorry. She has absolutely no filter. I noticed. It's one of my favorite things about her. She gets it from her mother, the directness. I figured. Elena shifted on the couch, turning to face him more fully. She's not wrong, though, about the faces. Marcus's heart rate spiked. What do you mean? I mean that I've been making faces at you, and you've been making them back, and we've been dancing around something for weeks without actually talking about it. Elena took a breath. I told my ex-husband no today. Part of the reason I was able to do that was because of you. Me? You showed me what it looks like when someone genuinely cares. Not the performative care, not the words without action, but the real thing. She reached out and took his hand, the same way he'd taken hers that morning on the balcony. I'm not saying I'm ready for anything serious. I'm still figuring out who I am without my past defining me. But I want you to know that whatever this is, she gestured between them, it matters to me. You matter to me. Marcus looked at their intertwined hands, then at Elena's face. She was watching him with a vulnerability that made his chest ache. You matter to me too, he said quietly. More than I expected. More than I was ready for. Is that scary? Terrifying. Good. I'm terrified too. Elena smiled tremulously. At least we can be terrified together. Marcus lifted their joined hands and pressed his lips to her knuckles. It was a small gesture, barely anything at all, but it felt momentous. A promise. A beginning. Together sounds good, he said. The weeks that followed were the happiest Marcus could remember since before Sarah's death. The Wednesday dinners continued, now with added warmth and easy affection. Saturday morning coffees stretched longer, sometimes bleeding into Saturday afternoon walks and Saturday evening movies on Marcus's couch. Lily presided over it all with the satisfaction of someone who had personally orchestrated a great romance. I'm basically a matchmaker, she announced one Wednesday, while Elena helped her with math homework at the kitchen table. Like in those old movies, the wise friend who brings the couple together? You're 11, Marcus pointed out. Age is just a number. Wisdom is eternal. Where do you get these lines? TikTok. Also books. I contain multitudes. Elena laughed, that sound Marcus had come to crave. She's not wrong. She definitely had a hand in this. I had both hands in this. I worked very hard. You ambushed Elena at our front door and interrogated her for 20 minutes. Strategic relationship facilitation. Marcus shook his head, but he was smiling. Everything made him smile these days. The feeling was unfamiliar, almost disorienting, like putting on clothes that didn't quite fit because he'd spent so long wearing grief like a second skin. One evening in late October, Marcus came home from work to find Elena and Lily in his apartment working on something at the dining table. Papers were spread everywhere, covered in Lily's careful handwriting and Elena's more chaotic notes. "What's going on here?" Lily looked up, her face bright with excitement. "Elena's helping me with my family history project for school. We have to make a presentation about our family tree and traditions and stuff." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. Family history meant Sarah, meant questions about the mother Lily barely remembered, meant photographs and stories and all the things he'd carefully packed away because looking at them hurt too much. "That sounds nice," he managed. Elena caught his eye, her expression understanding. "Lily wanted to include some things about her mom. I told her we should check with you first." "It's okay if you don't want to talk about it," Lily said quickly, her excitement dimming. "I know it makes you sad. I can just do Dad's side of the family." Marcus sat down heavily at the table. He looked at the papers spread before him, Lily's careful research into grandparents and great-grandparents, a hand-drawn family tree with blank spaces where Sarah's family should be. "No," he said finally. "You should include your mom. She's part of your history, part of who you are." Lily's face brightened again. "Really?" "Really." Marcus took a breath. "I have some boxes in the closet, photo albums mostly, some of your mom's old things. I packed them away when—" He stopped. "I packed them away, but I think it's time to unpack them. Can we look tonight?" "I don't see why not." They moved to the living room where Marcus retrieved 3 cardboard boxes from the back of his bedroom closet. He hadn't opened them in years, hadn't been able to face what was inside. But with Lily beside him and Elena's quiet presence across the room, it felt manageable. It felt like something he could survive. The first box was photographs. Lily gasped as they pulled out album after album, each one documenting a different chapter of Sarah's life, and by extension, Marcus's life with her. "Is this Mom?" Lily pointed at a photograph of a young woman with dark hair and laughing eyes, caught mid-motion at what looked like a beach. "That's her. Our honeymoon in Puerto Rico. She insisted on going swimming at 6 in the morning because she wanted to see the sunrise over the water. She's beautiful." She was. They went through the albums slowly, Marcus narrating each photograph as best he could remember. Sarah at their wedding, radiant in white. Sarah pregnant with Lily, one hand resting on her belly. Sarah holding newborn Lily in the hospital, exhausted and glowing. "I don't remember any of this," Lily said softly, looking at a photograph of herself as a toddler, sitting on Sarah's lap. "I mean, I know it happened, but I don't remember what she felt like, what she smelled like, what her voice sounded like." Marcus's throat tightened. "She smelled like lavender. She used this lavender lotion every night before bed, and her voice was—" He closed his eyes, trying to conjure the memory. "Warm, like honey. She sang to you every night, even when you were too little to understand the words." "What did she sing?" "Old Beatles songs, mostly. She loved the Beatles. Here Comes the Sun was her favorite. She said it reminded her of hope." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she started humming, a melody Marcus recognized immediately. "Here Comes the Sun, do, 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 do." He joined in, his voice rough and uncertain, and together they hummed the song that Sarah had loved, that she had sung to their daughter, that had been silent in this apartment for 6 years. When they finished, Marcus looked up and saw that Elena was crying, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. Her hand pressed over her mouth. "Sorry," she said, wiping at her eyes. "I didn't mean to intrude on this moment." "You're not intruding." Marcus reached out and pulled her closer, onto the floor beside him and Lily. "You're part of this now, part of us." Elena leaned against his shoulder, and Lily scooted closer on his other side, and for a moment they sat there, surrounded by photographs of a woman Marcus had loved and lost, feeling something that had been broken slowly beginning to heal. The second box contained Sarah's personal effects. Her jewelry, mostly untouched. A collection of books she'd been reading when she died. Bookmarks still in place. Letters she'd written to Marcus over the years tied with a ribbon that was slightly frayed at the edges. And at the bottom, a small blue journal. "What's that?" Lily asked. Marcus pulled it out carefully, his hands trembling. I forgot this was in here. Your mom started keeping a journal when she got pregnant with you. She wanted to write down everything she was feeling, everything she wanted to tell you someday. Can I read it? Marcus hesitated. He'd never read the journal himself, couldn't bear to see Sarah's handwriting, her thoughts, the plans she'd made for a future she would never see. But it didn't belong to him. It belonged to Lily. Yes, he said, but maybe not tonight. Maybe when you're ready. Lily took the journal carefully, holding it like something precious. Thank you, Dad. Thank your mom. She's the one who wrote it. They spent another hour going through the boxes, pulling out memories Marcus had tried to forget. It hurt. There was no way around the hurt, but it was a different kind of pain than he was used to. Clean, somehow, like lancing a wound that had been festering for years. By the time they finished, it was nearly 10 o'clock. Lily was yawning, leaning against Marcus's shoulder, the blue journal clutched to her chest. Time for bed, Marcus said. Can I keep the journal? In my room? Of course. Lily stood up slowly, still half asleep. She hugged Marcus tightly, then turned and hugged Elena with equal fervor. Thank you, she said, for being here, for making Dad brave enough to open the boxes. You did that, Elena said. Not me. We all did it together. Lily yawned again. That's what families do. She shuffled off to bed, leaving Marcus and Elena alone amid the scattered photographs and memories. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of the evening settling around them. Are you okay? Elena asked finally. Marcus considered the question honestly. I don't know. He shook his head. I've been avoiding that for 6 years, telling myself I wasn't ready, that it would hurt too much. And it did hurt. But it also felt necessary, felt like healing. He looked at Elena, her face soft in the lamplight. I couldn't have done it without you here. Yes, you could. Maybe. But I didn't want to. I wanted you here. He stopped, suddenly aware of how much he was revealing. I wanted to share this with you, the hard parts and the healing parts. All of it. Elena reached out and cupped his face in her hands, a gesture so tender it made his breath catch. I want that too, she said. All of it. Whatever comes. She kissed him then, soft and slow and inevitable, like something that had been waiting to happen since the night they'd met at Jennifer's wedding. Marcus pulled her closer, feeling something unlock in his chest that had been sealed away for years. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Elena rested her forehead against his. That was long overdue, Marcus finished. I was going to say perfect, but long overdue works too. They sat together among the photographs of Marcus's past, holding on to each other like anchors in a storm. It wasn't the dramatic, passionate kiss of movie romances. It was something quieter, something real. It was the beginning of whatever came next. The next few weeks moved in a blur of small, significant moments. Marcus found himself reaching for Elena's hand without thinking, kissing her goodbye when she left for the evening, texting her random thoughts throughout the day. The habits of partnership, rusty from years of disuse, slowly came back to him. Lily, for her part, was insufferably smug about the whole thing. I knew it, she said approximately once a day. I called this from the beginning. You met Elena 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks of being right. Jennifer called Marcus the week before Thanksgiving, full of excitement about the family's holiday plans. Mom's hosting this year. Please tell me you're coming. You skipped last year. I didn't skip. You had an excuse, just like every year. Jennifer's voice softened. Marcus, it's been 6 years. We miss you. At actual family events, not just obligatory weddings. Marcus thought about the Thanksgiving dinners he'd avoided, the sympathetic glances, the careful questions, the way everyone treated him like he might shatter at any moment. He'd convinced himself he was protecting Lily from that awkwardness, but really, he'd been protecting himself. Okay, he heard himself say. I'll be there. Really? Jennifer sounded genuinely shocked. You're not going to cancel at the last minute? I'm not going to cancel. And He hesitated, then pushed forward. Can I bring someone? The silence on the other end was deafening. Someone? Jennifer finally said, her voice rising with barely contained excitement. Someone like a someone? Don't make it weird. Is it Elena? Please tell me it's Elena. I will personally take credit for this for the rest of my life. It's Elena. Jennifer's shriek was loud enough that Marcus had to hold the phone away from his ear. I knew it! I knew you two would hit it off. Mom owes me $50. You bet on my love life? Of course we did. It was the most interesting thing to happen in this family in years. Jennifer was practically vibrating through the phone. Bring her and Lily, and we'll make it a proper family Thanksgiving. Oh my God, I have to tell David. He owes me $50 too. How many people bet on my love life? Everyone. Literally everyone. Aunt Patricia started a spreadsheet. Marcus hung up the phone feeling slightly dizzy. He hadn't anticipated that his decision to stop disappearing would have quite so many ripple effects. That evening, over dinner, he told Elena about the invitation. Thanksgiving with your family, she said slowly. That's significant. Too significant? You don't have to come. I know we haven't really defined what this is yet, and meeting the whole family might be, I want to come. Elena reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I want to meet the people who matter to you, even if they apparently have a betting pool about our relationship. The betting pool is mortifying. The betting pool is adorable. It means they care. Lily, who had been suspiciously quiet throughout this conversation, finally spoke up. Does this mean I get to meet your extended family too? You've met most of them at various events. But this time I get to meet them as Elena's. She stopped, searching for the right word. As Elena's person? Like, officially? I suppose so. Cool. Lily nodded with satisfaction. I'm going to prepare talking points. First impressions are important. Talking points? Yes, like, Elena is very nice and makes good pancakes and my dad is happier than he's been in years, stuff like that. You don't need talking points. I'm preparing them anyway. Preparation is key to success. Marcus looked at Elena, who was trying very hard not to laugh. Are you sure you want to do this? Thanksgiving with my family and my extremely strange daughter? I've never been more sure of anything. Elena's smile was warm and genuine. We're going forward, remember? Only forward. Only forward, Marcus agreed. And for the first time since Sarah's death, he actually believed it was possible. The week before Thanksgiving was chaos. Lily had her family history presentation at school, which she'd turned into an elaborate multimedia project complete with scanned photographs and a playlist of Beatles songs. She'd read parts of Sarah's journal, selected passages, carefully chosen, and incorporated quotes from her mother into the presentation. Marcus attended the school event with Elena beside him, watching his daughter stand in front of her class and talk about the mother she barely remembered, the father who had raised her alone, and the importance of moving forward while honoring the past. My mom died when I was 5, Lily said, her voice clear and steady. I don't remember much about her, but I know she loved me. I know she wanted me to be happy, and I know that my dad has spent 6 years making sure I had everything I needed, even when he was hurting too. Marcus felt tears sliding down his cheeks. Elena gripped his hand tightly. But the thing I've learned, Lily continued, is that family isn't just about the people you're born to. It's about the people who show up, the people who stay, the people who help you become who you're supposed to be. She looked directly at Marcus and Elena. My family got bigger this year, and I think my mom would be happy about that. The classroom erupted in applause. Lily took a small bow, grinning, and made her way back to her seat. She was immediately surrounded by classmates asking questions and offering congratulations. Marcus excused himself and slipped into the hallway, overwhelmed by emotion. Elena followed him a moment later. Are you okay? I don't know. He leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath. I spent so long trying to protect her from my grief, trying to make sure she had a normal childhood. And meanwhile, He shook his head. She's the strongest person I know, stronger than me. She learned it from you. I don't think so. I know so. Elena stepped closer, cupping his face in her hands. You taught her how to survive, how to keep going when everything falls apart, how to love even when it hurts. She kissed him softly. She's remarkable because you raised her to be remarkable. Marcus closed his eyes, letting her words wash over him. For so long, he'd felt like a failure, a father going through the motions, a man too broken to be whole. But here was his daughter, thriving and wise and generous, and here was this woman telling him he had something to do with that. Maybe he'd been more present than he'd given himself credit for. Maybe surviving was enough. Maybe he was enough. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For seeing me. For making me believe I'm worth seeing. Elena smiled, her eyes bright. You've always been worth seeing, Marcus. You just needed someone to remind you. They stood in the hallway of Lily's school, holding each other, while the sounds of children's voices echoed around them. It wasn't a dramatic moment. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was something smaller and more significant. Two people who had been invisible, learning how to be seen together. And in that moment, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt ready for whatever came next. Thanksgiving morning arrived with the kind of crisp, golden light that made everything feel significant. Marcus stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting a tie he hadn't worn in years, and tried to remember the last time he'd felt this nervous about a family gathering. The answer, he realized, was never. Even at his own wedding, he'd felt more excitement than anxiety. But today was different. Today he was bringing Elena to meet the entire Chen extended family, officially introducing her as someone who mattered, someone who had become essential to his life in ways he was still learning to articulate. Dad, you've been fixing that tie for 10 minutes, Lily called from the hallway. It looks fine. Everything looks fine. Can we please go before I die of anticipation? You're not going to die of anticipation. I might. It's a real medical condition. I read about it online. You should stop reading things online. Marcus gave his reflection one final look, then stepped out of the bathroom. Lily was waiting in her best dress, a deep purple thing she'd picked out herself, with her hair carefully braided in a style Elena had taught her the week before. You look beautiful, Marcus said. I know. Elena helped. Lily grinned. Speaking of which, is she meeting us here or at Grandma's house? Here. She should be. The knock came right on cue. 3 soft taps, their familiar rhythm. Lily raced to the door and threw it open. Elena stood in the hallway, holding a pie in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other, looking simultaneously elegant and terrified. You brought pie, Lily said approvingly. Good strategy. Everyone loves pie. I made it myself. Well, I attempted to make it myself. If it's terrible, we'll pretend I bought it. Noted. Lily took the pie and headed toward the kitchen. I'll put this in a carrier. Dad, stop standing there looking stunned and compliment your girlfriend. Marcus felt heat rise to his face. They hadn't actually used the word girlfriend yet, hadn't defined what they were beyond together and figuring it out. But Lily, as always, had no patience for ambiguity. You look amazing, he said, stepping forward to kiss Elena softly. And terrified. I am terrified. I haven't done the meet the family thing in over a decade. Elena laughed nervously. What if they hate me? They won't hate you. What if I say something wrong? What if I accidentally insult someone's casserole? Don't insult anyone's casserole and you'll be fine. That's not as reassuring as you think it is. Marcus took her hands, steadying her the way she'd steadied him so many times over the past months. Elena, these people have been betting on our relationship since before we even had one. Jennifer started a spreadsheet. They're going to love you because loving you gives them the satisfaction of being right. Elena laughed, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. When you put it that way. Also, they're going to love you because you're wonderful. That's the main thing. The betting pool is secondary. I'll take it. The drive to Marcus's mother's house took 45 minutes through light holiday traffic. Lily filled the silence with a constant stream of information about each family member they were about to encounter. Likes, dislikes, topics to avoid, topics to encourage. Uncle Robert loves talking about his boat, so just ask him about the boat, and he'll be happy for hours. Aunt Patricia is obsessed with her grandchildren, so compliment any children you see and she'll adore you. Cousin Michael just got divorced, so don't mention marriage or relationships around him. He's still sensitive. How do you know all this? Elena asked. I pay attention. Also, I have a file. A file? On my tablet, family profiles. I started it 2 years ago for strategic purposes. Marcus glanced at his daughter in the rear-view mirror. What strategic purposes could an 11-year-old possibly have? Birthday gift optimization, holiday conversation navigation, general social survival. Lily shrugged. Information is power. She's going to run a corporation someday, Elena murmured, or a small country. Both. I'm going to do both. They pulled into the driveway of Marcus's childhood home just after noon. The house was already full of cars, his mother's sedan, Jennifer's SUV, various aunts and uncles and cousins spreading out along the street. Through the windows, Marcus could see people moving, laughing, living the kind of full connected life he'd spent 6 years avoiding. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Hey, Elena's voice was soft beside him. We don't have to go in yet. We can sit here for a minute. I'm fine. You're white-knuckling the steering wheel. Marcus forced himself to relax his grip. It's just a lot, all at once. I've been avoiding these gatherings for so long. What if I've forgotten how to do this? Then we figure it out together. That's what we do now, remember? Together, Marcus repeated. Right. Besides, Lily chimed in from the back seat, I have talking points prepared. If anything gets awkward, I'll deploy them. Your talking points are not going to be necessary. You don't know that. Preparation is key to success. Yes, I know. They sat in the car for another moment, gathering courage. Then Lily unbuckled her seatbelt and announced, Okay, I'm going in. You two can have your moment, but I see Cousin Jenny through the window, and I need to tell her about my presentation. She was out of the car and up the front steps before Marcus could respond. She's remarkable, Elena said. She gets it from her mother. She gets it from both of you. Elena reached over and took his hand. Ready? Marcus looked at the house, at the family waiting inside, at the woman beside him who had somehow become essential to his survival. Ready, he said. They walked up the front steps together. The door opened before they could knock, and Marcus's mother appeared in the doorway. Linda Chen was a small woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd spent 6 years watching her son retreat from life, offering support he consistently refused, waiting for him to come back to them. Now she looked at Elena, then at Marcus, and her face cracked into the widest smile he'd seen from her in years. You must be Elena. Linda stepped forward and pulled Elena into a firm hug. I've heard so much about you. Jennifer hasn't stopped talking since she found out you were coming. It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Chen. Linda, please, Mrs. Chen makes me feel ancient. She released Elena and turned to Marcus, her eyes suddenly bright with tears. And you, my boy, you actually came. I told Jennifer I would. You've told Jennifer a lot of things over the years. Linda reached up and cupped his face in her hands, a gesture that reminded Marcus painfully of Elena. But you came. You brought someone. You're here. I'm here, Mom. She hugged him fiercely, the way she hadn't hugged him since Sarah's funeral. Marcus felt something crack in his chest, another wall coming down, another piece of armor he'd worn for so long he'd forgotten it was there. Come in, Linda said, finally releasing him. Everyone's dying to see you, especially your Aunt Patricia. She's claiming credit for the whole thing because she prayed for you to find someone. I thought Jennifer was claiming credit. Everyone's claiming credit. That's how you know it's a real Chen family occasion. The house was exactly as Marcus remembered it, warm and chaotic and full of noise. Relatives clustered in every room, children running through the hallways, the kitchen overflowing with food and the women who had prepared it. Marcus had forgotten how loud his family was, how present, how aggressively loving. Jennifer found them almost immediately, dragging David behind her like an accessory. You came. You actually came. She hugged Marcus, then Elena, then Marcus again. And you brought the pie. Is that homemade? It looks homemade. It's an attempt at homemade, Elena said. Results may vary. I'm sure it's perfect. Everything about this is perfect. Jennifer was practically vibrating with excitement. Do you know how long we've waited for this? For Marcus to actually show up to something with someone? 6 years, Marcus suggested dryly. Longer than that. You were barely present even when Sarah was alive. Jennifer's face softened at the mention of Sarah's name. But she would have loved this. You know that, right? She would have loved seeing you happy again. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I know. Good. Hold on to that. Jennifer clapped her hands together. Now, let me introduce Elena to everyone. Aunt Patricia has questions. Many questions. That sounds ominous. It's not ominous, it's just Patricia. Jennifer linked her arm through Elena's and began steering her toward the living room. Come on. The sooner we get through the interrogation, the sooner we can eat. Marcus watched them go, feeling strangely bereft without Elena beside him. He'd become so accustomed to her presence, her steadying influence, that her absence, even across a room, felt significant. She's good for you. Marcus turned to find his mother standing beside him, 2 glasses of wine in her hands. Here, you look like you need this. Thanks. He took the glass but didn't drink. What makes you say she's good for me? Because you're standing straighter. Because you made eye contact with me when you came through the door. Because... Linda's voice caught. Because you look like my son again, the one I thought I'd lost. Mom, I'm not being dramatic. I'm being honest. She took a sip of her own wine. After Sarah died, something in you shut down. You went through the motions, working, parenting, existing, but you weren't really there. We all saw it. We all worried. I know, I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Grief isn't something you can control or schedule. It takes as long as it takes. Linda looked toward the living room where Elena was now surrounded by curious relatives. But something changed. She changed you. I don't know if she changed me. I think she just... Marcus searched for the right words. She reminded me that I was allowed to change, that surviving wasn't the same as living. Linda nodded slowly. That's a good distinction. She taught me that. Well, her and Lily. They've both been pushing me to show up, to stop disappearing. Lily's a remarkable child. She is. She's the best thing I ever did. Not the only thing. Linda patted his arm gently. Sarah would be proud of you for raising that girl, for finding the courage to love again, for being here today. Marcus felt tears prick at his eyes. He blinked them back, not wanting to break down in the middle of his mother's foyer. Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me. I'm your mother. Giving up on you was never an option. She smiled. Now go rescue your girlfriend from Patricia. She's been asking about marriage intentions for the past 5 minutes. We've been together for 2 months. That's practically engaged by Patricia's standards. Marcus handed his mother his untouched wine and made his way toward the living room where Elena was indeed fielding questions from a circle of curious relatives. She caught his eye as he approached, her expression a mixture of amusement and mild panic. There you are, she said, reaching for his hand. Your aunt was just asking about our 5-year plan. We don't have a 5-year plan. Everyone should have a 5-year plan, Aunt Patricia insisted. It shows stability, forethought, commitment to the future. Patricia, they just started dating, Jennifer interjected. Let them breathe. I'm just asking questions. Questions are healthy. Questions are invasive when you've known someone for 15 minutes. Marcus pulled Elena closer, wrapping an arm around her waist. Our current plan is to survive Thanksgiving dinner. Beyond that, we're taking things one day at a time. That's very wise, Uncle Robert said from across the room. 1 day at a time. That's how I approach boat maintenance. No one asked about your boat, Robert, Aunt Patricia snapped. Someone should. The hull needs refinishing. The conversation devolved into the familiar chaos of extended family dynamics. Multiple threads overlapping, old arguments surfacing, children weaving through legs and demanding attention. Marcus stood in the middle of it all, Elena warm against his side, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt like he belonged. Dinner was served at 3 o'clock, the massive dining table groaning under the weight of turkey and stuffing and every side dish imaginable. Marcus found himself seated between Elena and Lily, surrounded by the noise and warmth of family. Before they ate, Linda stood and raised her glass. I want to make a toast, she said, to family. The ones we're born to and the ones we choose. The ones who stay, even when staying is hard. Her eyes found Marcus across the table. "And to my son, who came home today. Really came home. We've missed you, Marcus, more than you know." "To Marcus," the table echoed. Marcus felt his face flush, but he raised his glass along with everyone else. Beside him, Elena squeezed his hand under the table. "To being seen," she whispered, "just for him." "To being seen," he whispered back. The meal was loud and chaotic and perfect. Conversations overlapped, dishes were passed, stories were told and retold with varying degrees of accuracy. Lily entertained the table with tales from her school presentation, carefully edited to emphasize her brilliance while downplaying her father's emotional breakdown in the hallway. "Dad cried," she reported matter-of-factly. "But it was the good kind of crying, the kind that means you're healing." "Thank you for sharing that," Marcus said dryly. "You're welcome. Vulnerability is strength." "Where did you learn that?" "TikTok. Also Elena. She says it a lot." Elena smiled sheepishly. "I may have mentioned it once or twice." "She's a good influence," Linda said approvingly. "Unlike TikTok." After dinner, the family scattered into various groups. The children retreated to the basement for video games. The older generation settled into the living room for coffee and complaints about politics. Marcus found himself on the back porch with Elena, Jennifer, and David, watching the sunset over his mother's small backyard. "This was nice," Jennifer said, leaning against David's shoulder. "Having you here, having everyone together." "It was," Marcus agreed. "Will you come to Christmas?" "Jenny, I'm just asking. No pressure. Well, some pressure. It's been 6 years of you avoiding holidays, Marcus. I'm allowed some pressure." Elena laughed softly. "She has a point. Don't encourage her." "I'm not encouraging. I'm observing." Elena looked at him with those warm eyes that had become his anchor. Would it be so bad? Coming to Christmas? Marcus thought about the past 6 years, the quiet holidays with just him and Lily, the careful avoidance of family gatherings, the belief that he was protecting himself and his daughter from awkwardness and pity. He told himself it was easier that way. Safer. But easy and safe weren't the same as good. They weren't the same as full or happy or alive. "No," he said finally. "It wouldn't be bad." Jennifer made a sound that was somewhere between a squeal and a sob. "Really?" "Really. I'll come to Christmas and New Year's and whatever else you want to throw at me." He took a breath. "I'm done disappearing." "You promise?" "I promise." Jennifer hugged him so hard he couldn't breathe for a moment. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. "Sarah would be so happy," she said. "I know we keep saying that, but it's true. She hated how isolated you got after—" She stopped. "She would have wanted this for you. The connection, the family, the love." Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice. "I'm going to go tell Mom," Jennifer said, wiping at her eyes. "She's going to cry. Everyone's going to cry. It's going to be a whole thing." She hurried back into the house, David trailing behind with an apologetic shrug. Marcus and Elena stood alone on the porch, the evening air cool around them. "That was a big commitment," Elena said quietly. "I know." "Are you sure you're ready for it?" Marcus turned to face her. In the fading light, she looked beautiful and uncertain, and exactly like everything he wanted. "I'm not sure I'm ready for anything," he admitted. 6 months ago, I was a ghost. I moved through the world without touching it. I had Lily, and that was enough. Or I told myself it was enough. He took her hands in his. "But then I met you, and you saw me. The real me, not the version I'd been performing for years. And something in me woke up. Marcus, I'm not done." He squeezed her hands gently. "You taught me that surviving isn't the same as living, that being visible is a choice, and choosing it is an act of courage. You taught me that I was allowed to be happy again, even after everything I'd lost. I didn't teach you anything. You already knew it. You'd just forgotten. Then you reminded me. And that's just as important." He lifted her hands and pressed them to his chest, over his heart. "I love you, Elena. I know it's only been 2 months, and I know we said we were figuring things out, but I don't need to figure this out. I know how I feel." Elena's eyes were bright with tears. You love me? I love you, completely, terrifyingly. In a way, I didn't think I was capable of anymore. Marcus. She laughed, the sound wet with emotion. I love you too. I've been trying not to say it because I didn't want to pressure you, didn't want to move too fast, but I love you. I've loved you since the night you drove me home from the wedding and talked about Sarah like she was still the most important part of your story. She was. For a long time. I know. And I'm not trying to replace her. You're not replacing her. Marcus searched for the words. You're adding to the story. Making it bigger. Giving it new chapters I didn't think were possible. Elena pulled him closer, wrapping her arms around his neck. New chapters. I like that. I like it too. They kissed as the sun finished setting, as the sky turned from gold to purple to deep blue. It was the kind of kiss that felt like a promise, soft and certain and full of everything they'd both been afraid to hope for. When they finally pulled apart, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he said. What? Tonight, tomorrow, every day after that. Stay with me and Lily. Be part of our story. Elena laughed softly. Are you asking me to move in? I'm asking you to stay. The logistics can come later. That's very impractical. I'm done being practical. I've been practical for 6 years. I'm ready to be reckless. Reckless? She smiled. I like that word. It sounds like living. It is living. It's the kind of living I forgot how to do. He cupped her face in his hands. Say yes. Please. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, that bright, warm smile that had become the center of his universe. Yes, she said, to staying, to new chapters, to being reckless together. Together, Marcus repeated. That's my favorite word now. Mine too. They walked back into the house hand in hand, into the warmth and chaos of family. Lily found them immediately, her face bright with excitement. Grandma said you're coming to Christmas and New Year's, and she's already planning the Easter menu. She bounced on her heels. This is the best Thanksgiving ever. It is, Marcus agreed. Also, I heard you two on the porch. The window was open. Lily grinned wickedly. You said the L word. You were eavesdropping. I was gathering information. There's a difference. She hugged Elena tightly. I'm glad you're staying. Our team needed a third member. I'm honored to be recruited. You should be. Our standards are very high. The evening wound down slowly, the way good evenings do. Marcus helped his mother with the dishes, while Elena joined the aunts for coffee and interrogation. Lily fell asleep on the couch, surrounded by cousins, her face peaceful in the lamplight. At some point, Marcus found himself standing in the doorway of his childhood living room, watching his daughter sleep and his girlfriend laugh, and his family move around them like a living, breathing organism. This, he thought, this is what I was missing. Linda appeared beside him, following his gaze. She fits, Linda said quietly. She does. So do you, finally. Linda patted his arm. Welcome back, son. Thanks, Mom. It's good to be back. Good to... They loaded a sleeping Lily into the car around 10 o'clock, surrounded by hugs and promises to call and reminders about Christmas plans. Elena climbed into the passenger seat, pie dish empty and wine bottle long since finished. That was, she started. A lot? Wonderful. It was wonderful. She leaned her head against the window, smiling. I forgot what this felt like, being part of something. Me too. The drive home was quiet, Lily snoring softly in the back seat. Marcus reached over and took Elena's hand, threading their fingers together. Thank you, he said. For what? For coming today. For being brave when I couldn't be. He glanced at her. For everything. For the last 2 months. For changing my life. You changed your own life. I just happened to be there. You were more than there. You were essential. He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles, the way he had that first morning on his balcony. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. They pulled into the parking garage of their building just before 11. Marcus carried Lily up to the apartment, tucking her into bed still in her purple dress. She stirred slightly as he pulled the covers up. "Dad?" "I'm here, sweetheart." "Is Elena staying?" "Yes, she's staying." Lily smiled without opening her eyes. "Good. I like our team." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." He kissed her forehead and slipped out of the room, finding Elena waiting in the hallway. "She okay?" "Perfect. She's perfect." Marcus pulled Elena into his arms, holding her close. This was a good day. The best day. There will be more. I promise, more good days than bad ones. "I believe you." Elena looked up at him, her eyes soft. "I believe in us." "So do I." He kissed her gently. "For the first time in 6 years, I believe something good is possible." They stood in the hallway of Marcus's apartment, holding each other as the clock ticked past midnight. A new day was beginning, another chapter in a story that Marcus had thought was over. But stories don't end just because you stop believing in them. They wait, patient and persistent, for you to pick them back up. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, someone comes along and reminds you that the best parts are still ahead. 6 months later, on a warm spring evening, Marcus stood on the same balcony where he and Elena had first had coffee. But the view was different now, fuller, somehow. More alive. Elena's plants had spread throughout the apartment, turning his beige walls into something approaching a garden. Lily's presence was everywhere. Her books, her projects, her constant energy. And Elena herself had become so woven into the fabric of their lives that Marcus couldn't remember what mornings felt like without her. She joined him on this balcony, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. Thinking deep thoughts? Thinking about how different everything is. He took the coffee, wrapping his hands around its warmth. "A year ago, I was invisible. I was surviving, but I wasn't living. I thought that was all I deserved. And now? Now I have this." He gestured at the apartment behind them, at Lily's laughter floating from her room, at the woman standing beside him. "Now I have everything." Elena leaned against his shoulder. "I feel the same way. A year ago I was afraid to leave my apartment, afraid to be seen, to be known, to risk being hurt again." She smiled. "Now I can't imagine going back to that." "You don't have to, ever." "I know." She turned to face him. "Marcus, there's something I want to ask you. Anything. Remember when you asked me to stay? That night on your mother's porch?" "I remember. I want to ask you the same thing, but bigger." She took a breath. "I want to ask you to stay forever. I want to ask you to marry me." Marcus felt his heart stop for a moment, then restart with a fierce, joyful rhythm. "You're proposing?" "I'm proposing. I know it's not traditional, and I know we've only been together for 8 months, but—" She laughed nervously. "I've never been more certain of anything. I want to be your wife. I want to be Lily's, whatever she wants me to be. I want to be part of your story, officially, permanently, for the rest of our lives." Marcus set down his coffee and cupped her face in his hands, the way she'd done for him so many times. "Yes," he said. 1,000 times yes. Elena's face split into the brightest smile he'd ever seen. "Really? Really, I was going to ask you the same thing, actually. I have a ring hidden in my sock drawer." "You do not." "I do. I bought it 3 weeks ago. I've been trying to figure out the perfect moment. This is the perfect moment. I'm realizing that." He kissed her deeply, thoroughly, with all the love he'd been afraid to feel for so long. "I love you, Elena Reyes. I'm going to spend the rest of my life showing you how much. I love you too, Marcus Chen, and I can't wait to see what comes next." From inside the apartment came Lily's voice, loud and excited. "Did she say yes? I heard proposal talk. Did she say yes?" Marcus and Elena laughed, the sound blending together in the evening air. "She said yes," Marcus called back. Lily appeared in the balcony doorway, her face radiant with joy. "I knew it. I knew you would. I'm going to be the best flower girl ever." She threw herself at both of them, wrapping her arms around their waists. "We're officially a team now, like legally. Like, legally, Elena agreed, tears streaming down her face. The three of them stood on the balcony as the sun set over the city, holding each other, laughing and crying and planning a future that none of them had dared to imagine. Marcus thought about the wedding where this had started. The corner seat, the hunched shoulders, the desperate desire to disappear. He thought about Elena sitting down beside him, recognizing something broken in him that matched something broken in her. He thought about Lily's voicemail, her insistence that he mattered, her certainty that he deserved to be happy. They had all been right. His daughter, his cousin, this woman who had become his whole world. He did matter. He did deserve happiness. And he was finally, fully ready to claim it. "What are you thinking about?" Elena asked, looking up at him. "The beginning," he said. "The night we met. How scared I was to be seen." "And now?" Marcus smiled, pulling both of them closer. "Now I'm not scared anymore. Now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." The sun finished setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple. A new night was beginning, full of possibility and promise and love. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Chen was ready to stay for all of it.